Freedom of the press is vital in the United States and any democracy.
That's true, but sometimes I think freedom of the press goes too far.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
Thank you, Mark Willey, and I would also like to welcome you to another American Religious Town Hall meeting. Glad that you've joined us today. If this is your first time, we're especially glad that you've joined us for today's program. Tell your friends about us, and then, of course, you can see on the website some of the past programs we've archived for you. Well, we're glad that you've joined us for this particular program. Before we get started in our discussion, I would like for our panelists to introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they do. Let's start with the gentleman to my right.
I'm John Robert Skeldon, a priest of the Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, serving at St. Patrick's Cathedral in downtown Fort Worth, Texas.
Hi, I'm Carl Troval. I'm the Richard Dinda University Professor of Lutheran Identity and Mission at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We're a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
Hello, my name is Mel Robeck. I'm Senior Professor of Church History and Ecumenics, as well as the Special Assistant to the President for Ecumenical Relations at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California, and I'm an Assemblies of God minister.
My name is John Peterson. I am a priest in the Episcopal Church, and I'm canonically resident in the Diocese of Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Tony Matthews, and I'm the lead pastor at North Garland Baptist Fellowship in Garland, Texas.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And Dr. Troval, you have a title change.
I do have a title
which
change.
means you've had a job change as well.
I have.
Tell us a little bit about that, if you would, please. We've been used to you in the other role. Now, how about this one?
Well, this role is a move to a university professor position. And one of the things that higher ed struggles with is, especially those of us who are in faith-based institutions, is maintaining our theological and ecclesiastical identity. And so my role will be to foster that identity and the mission of the university.
Well, congratulations to you. Thank you for
very
sharing that with us. All right, let's get to our program for today. Last January, a new film called The Post was released in theaters around the United States. The Post centers on the 1971 legal battle by the Washington Post and the New York Times over the publication of the Pentagon Papers. The Pentagon Papers revealed the undisclosed involvement of the United States government in the Vietnam War, showing a cover-up of that disastrous war spanning the presidencies of Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon. The Pentagon Papers became a battle between the press and the government. Ultimately, the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, supported the freedom of the press. In his concurring opinion, Justice Hugo Black argued that the framers of the First Amendment, quote, sought to give this new society strength and security by providing that freedom of speech, press, religion, and assembly should not be abridged, close quote. Today, I would like to ask our panelists to address these three important questions with regard to this subject. First of all, how important do you think it is for us to have freedom of the press? Second question, are there points where you believe the press goes too far in what and how it uses its freedom? And then finally, are there times when you believe the press is too hard or not hard enough on those in political office? That is our subject for today. Again, we're so glad that you've joined us for this discussion. Let's go back now to those who began to help start this program, and that goes to Reverend Plumley. Glad to have you here. You started us off. Tell us more of your thoughts on this subject.
Thank you. I believe that press freedom is vital, that without it, You cannot have a country that is governed by the people or even pretends to be governed by the people. Justice Black, in the Pentagon Papers decision, wrote that the press was to serve the governed, not the governors. So when we see those who are in positions of power spitting at the press and denigrating the press, we need to call them and their leadership into question. I want to set for you a hypothetical. What if once upon a time the United States had a leader who was known for multiple infidelities, who disrespected publicly anyone who said anything against him, who seemed in his international relations to have an odd preference for a country that had been an enemy for generations, who spoke in a very dangerous and ignorant manner about the use of nuclear weapons, who obstructed justice, who in speeches about, say something like a demonstration in Charlottesville, Virginia, gave a nod of approval to white supremacists. And beyond all of that, the worst, most disgusting, disreputable thing that leader ever did was that person lied every day, every way, about anything and everything. In that sort of situation, we need someone who is in a position to publicize, if nothing else, the checking of the facts about that person. And it's because of that I think we need to be emphasizing the freedom that our nation enjoys today because we have that kind of institution in our society.
All right, thank you very much for that perspective. Now, Dr. Robeck, you also helped to start the program today. Would you like to share some more thoughts?
Yeah,
on
I'd
your
like
position?
to start with an apology to our viewers and to my colleagues on this for having misspoken when I first said that sometimes the freedom of the press may go too far, when in fact I meant the press goes too far.
All right. Thank you.
I'm struck time and again in recent news coverage that national news agencies, whether it be the Los Angeles Times or the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN or any of the other news agencies, they sound to me more like the National Enquirer today than anything else. In other words, I would guess that 7 out of 10 stories are about immoral acts by a president that's in power at the moment. I don't care how many Stormy Daniels stories I have. You know, I just don't want to have to read that stuff all the time, every day, every day, every day. It'd be nice to get some news for a change. I have no problem whatsoever with investigators investigating the reality of this, but do I really need to know all of these kinds of things? I think that the press absolutely must have freedom to speak its mind. But, you know, in the Christian circles, we talk about the fruit of the Spirit, and one of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. There seems to be no control in the press. Whatever is salacious, whatever is something that people will talk about or gossip about, that's what we're going to do. It's all about sales. It's not about news. So I really worry a great deal about the kind of news we get. I've been looking at BBC News. I think that 80% of that is directly from CNN. So we have these kind of small groups of people that are all selling the same basic item, and it's very difficult to find out what's going on around the world unless you travel, unless you talk to people, unless you read about this in places other than the news agencies. The other place where I have real trouble with freedom of the press is when we hear all these so-called secrets leaked. You know, We have secret meetings between President Trump and the head of North Korea, or between people on both sides. And guess what? This is what they said. This is what they talked about. Well, that's not a secret meeting, really. It's just more sales pitch. I'm not against news, and I'm not against freedom of the press. I am very much in support of freedom of the press. But it would really be nice if they gave us something worth listening to.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Robeck. Father Skeldon, welcome back to the program. Your thoughts on the subject now, please.
I think perhaps maybe just to expand it, you know, it probably was different. I think that we may have even addressed this in a program some weeks back. You know, at some point, there were just like 3 major channels, and that was the primary source of news, and then the newspapers as well. And today, everything is so decentralized. I mean, you can just sort of like go to your own bailiwick or your own sort of echo chamber and read the stuff that sort of already reinforces already existing presuppositions or opinions that one has. As a result, what typically then might objectively be understood as opinion is now seen as fact. And, you know, there was I think it was Senator Moynihan who once said, you know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own fact, right? And so, but because of our sort of existing in an age in which the hermeneutic of suspicion is rampant and is sort of like the driving philosophy of a lot of people, you know, each person can sort of create their own truth, if you will. And so as a result, the objective fact gets lost. And this can happen just from some blogger, or it can happen from the President of the United States tweeting at 3 in the morning. As a result, I think perhaps a bigger dialogue is necessary to try to understand. You know, we got to come back to some sort of like basic definition of things, because as of right now, it seems to be utter chaos.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Matthews, welcome to the program. What are your thoughts on this subject today?
Very good topic. The freedom of the press, obviously, as we all have said, is protected by the First Amendment. And I was reading a resource, or an excerpt from a research titled "The Elements of Journalism," where the author said that journalism is not defined by technology nor by journalists or the techniques they employ. Rather, the principles and the purpose of journalism are defined by something more basic, the function news plays in the lives of the people. And then further, the purpose of journalism is thus to provide citizens with the information they need to make the best possible decisions about their lives, their communities, their societies, and their government. If that's the purpose of journalism, we're in trouble. Because, from my perspective, because when I turn on the news and I hear many of the journalists, it can be any of the news stations, the most popular ones. Everything is so polarized. If you like a candidate or if you like a politician, you won't say anything negative about the candidate or the politician when it's right out in everyone's face. If you dislike a candidate or a politician, you'll say everything negative and can't say anything positive. I long for the day when we can just get back to reporting, or that the press will get back to just reporting. And I understand that, you know, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. But I do think there's a responsibility that the press has to be fair and consistently balanced.
Thank you. I'm hearing the need for a few definitions when we're talking about the press and we're talking about journalism. Journalism today includes a much broader category of what we would used to call talking heads, or even call them that today. Some are pundits, some are journalists, and some are just those with opinions that they like to share. Does that confuse the matter in any way, do you think, for people as they're watching, as they're listening? Canon Peterson, welcome to the program. Your thoughts on the subject, please.
Well, first off, I would like to say for those who are listening to our program today, I highly recommend that you actually see the movie The Post. It was, I do not go to very many movies, but my wife told me that The Post was an absolute must. And as a faithful husband, I went and saw it, and she indeed is right. It is a must-see. And certainly the main theme of the film deals with the historical story, the Pentagon Papers. As we have heard around the table already today, it has a lot of bearing to exactly the political situation as well as of what we are facing today in this country. One thing I want to say that I really agree with Mel on is that today it's impossible to get any other news than domestic news, and domestic news basically dealing with the president's scandals. And that is really too bad because the world is going on and we're not learning about it, and we're becoming very ignorant of what is happening globally as a result of the fixation that we have simply on our very domestic issues that we are facing within this country today. Personally, I believe very much in the whole understanding of checks and balances. And I perhaps would not be as hard on the press, at least the mainline press, as some of my colleagues, because of the very thing that Hugo Black spoke about in relationship to freedom of speech, press, religion, and assembly. Where I do see a great problem today with regard to the press is the internet press and other forms of social media. To me, that is really where the critical issues rest, and certainly the problems of not being able to get any other news when you turn on a network news other than domestic news is certainly a major problem, which I'm totally in agreement with Mal on. But it seems to me that much of the problem is that while there's a checks and balances, somewhat at least, if not a great deal, in relationship to the mainline press, you simply don't have any of that with regard to social media and to the internet press. And of course, we have experienced within the last few months the types of scrutiny that Facebook is now under, simply because there is no checks or balances whatsoever when it is printed, and fake news or whatever it might be, most of it is pretty scandalous in relationship to what you have been just discussing in relationship to the types of checks and balances. Mm-hmm. So it seems to me that this is really an important issue. And so if I see and hear a statement that the press has gone too far, I'm not as concerned about that aspect of the relationship to the mainline press, because there is a checks and balance there. But certainly within the internet press, Facebook and those social media forms, I do think that there has to be an evaluation at least of going on.
All right, thank you very much for your perspective. And now, Dr. Troval, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
What is your position?
Well, you both touched on, Mel and John, you've both touched on something that in our society, it's hard to escape, but we live in a capitalist society. Therefore, that means that whoever can make the most money is going to survive, and who doesn't. And the capturing of eyeballs, of salacious stories, or all of that means that many organizations, traditional journalism organizations, I mean, Denver Post is a good example, is being completely squeezed out. Companies are buying them because they can't make ends meet, and then you have less reporters who then give worse and worse stories, or shorter and shorter. If you can imagine, trying to write 5 sermons a day and do that regularly. I mean, because you know how hard a good sermon takes to write. I mean, you can imagine a good research story takes a lot of time. You have to pay one person a whole full salary to write these, and then to produce them. And I mean, our news programs are very short and brief, which is part of the problem. But then we don't have the attention span anymore to even sit and listen to an in-depth, or do watch an in-depth show, in-depth reporting. So part of it is that I sometimes think we're getting the press that we've elected to choose to get. And I do know one thing: if something's free, you're the product. And people want free press, meaning monetarily free. But the minute we have monetarily free press, then we will not have a free press. And so I really encourage people to, I mean, I have, I think, more trust in the mainline press outlets. I mean, the Wall Street Journals, the New York Times. I think, obviously, they all have their opinions. They lean one way or the other. I agree with you about the not knowing enough international news. I mean, we're woefully ignorant in the U.S. on international. Am I going on a rant that I'm not supposed to do?
No, that's quite all right. But I am hearing a message,
Yeah.
though, coming through.
You know, I think part of it is personal. My daughter is in journalism. She went to be a journalist. She cares deeply about people, about the world. She's an NPR reporter in Houston, and to see the challenges that journalists face. And my son's girlfriend also is a newspaper journalist, and it's a struggle.
Full disclosure is good.
Yeah,
absolutely. But thank you
But
for
I
that.
believe in
I hear
a good
that.
one.
Definitely.
Mill said, if we
Thank you.
are if we silence an opinion, we may silence the truth. So I think a wide press that has a variety of opinions is very good.
And that has to be the last word for this segment, but you're free to speak in the next segment. So before we go to our summations, there is a very important message I'd like for you to hear. We'll be back in just a few moments.
Thank you, Pastor Lutz. We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you, Pastor Lutz, and today's closing statements.
Welcome back, and thank you for standing by. I do look forward to hearing from you. If you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like to have discussed on the program, please write that to us. You can see us there on the website, American Religious Town Hall. It's been on your screen. Please go there, and you can also find past programs that we've archived for you. Now let's go to our summations, and for that, let's return to Father Skeldon. You're first.
There's a great question statement, who watches the watchers? And I think in a lot of ways a free press is necessary precisely to sometimes ask the challenging and hard questions and do the research into institutions. Institutions across the board invariably can become corrupt, whether it be sport, think of Penn State, whether the government, the military, or even the church. All of it sometimes needs to be asked the very hard questions. Who watches the watchers?
Thank you, Father Skeldon. Good advice. Next to you is Reverend Plumley.
Thank you. I posed a hypothetical at the beginning of the program, and I might pose another one. It seems to me that if we were to try to create a place where all purveyors of information were perfect, we would be restricting freedom greatly. I think we've done a good job in this program of pointing out some of the weaknesses of our free press. I'm, however, going to stand up and say, despite the weaknesses, the press must remain free and vital. What I would hope that we could learn, we could help people learn, is how to judge the integrity and worth of the purveyors of information that they're looking at.
Thank you very much. Now, Canon Peterson.
Yes, I think that extremely important in this whole discussion are checks and balances. And it is important that the press continues, and if a particular press does not have checks and balances, it should. But I think it is important that checks and balances are always put on press, as well as the church, as well as the government. You have to have all these different social institutions with checks and balances.
Thank you for that. And now let's go to Dr. Matthews. Your summation, please.
I think the freedom of the press is vital. We are grateful for it. And at the same time, I think it's important that the press is fair and consistent and treat everyone the same, and I don't think they should ever out a CIA operative or someone whose life can be put in danger.
All right, thank you for that. And now, Dr. Robeck, your summation.
I think all of us are saying that freedom of the press is absolutely critical for our society. There's no question in my mind that that's the case. I could wish for a little self-control from the press. You know, it used to be that it was difficult to get a book published because they had to go through so many rounds of review, and there were only certain publishers, or only certain people that published. With social media, everybody is suddenly an author. Everybody's opinion is out there as though it counted as much as everybody else's. There was a reason that there were fewer publishers at that time. Good ideas surface. Bad ideas were kept out of the circulation. Now, all we have is whatever you think. It's okay.
All right, thank you very much. And now, Dr. Trovall, your summation, please.
Mel, in academia, we have peer review, is what he's talking about. People who are experts in areas always challenging one another. Who watches the watchers? I mean, who's watching the press? The press is to watch the press and hold them to standards of accountability. And I think that's why we have to have a robust free press. And I would encourage everyone to buy their news, not to just receive it, to maintain that healthy press.
All right, thank you very much. And as you probably would have expected, this town hall supports freedom of the press and freedom of speech. It's one of the reasons we're here, and it's why we're able to be here, because we do appreciate, we love that freedom, and we hope that it continues, and in a responsible way, shall we say. For now, the Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America, we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. So now, friends, until next week at the same time and over this very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you. Thy